Freedom's the answer. What's the question? You're listening to Ernest Hancock.
Yeah. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. Can't think of a thing, can't think of a thing, can't think of a thing except for big bad guys getting what they want. You know, we have Robert Naiman. He's policy director of justforeignpolicy.org. And the recent article he wrote, "The war is over, kiss a nurse and start packing." I'm hip to that. I like the graphic, man. Kiss a nurse, be done. From the famous World War II, war's over, and the sailor kissing the nurse in Times Square kind of thing. I knew exactly what you're talking about. Now, and I read your other article, McGovern Jones pushed for real withdrawal plan and so on. And I want to share this one thing with you, Robert. I was at Camp Casey when Cindy Sheehan was doing her thing, George Bush and all that kind of stuff, covering it for the radio. And I witnessed something that I understood what it was as I was watching evolve. Been a political activist for a long time, libertarian and all that. I could see what was happening. Move On goes to Cindy, and they said, you advocate for phased withdrawal instead of this just come home like Ron Paul thing. Or you say phased withdrawal, or we're pulling support, and you're a pariah, and we will bury you. And she goes, nope, have a nice day, not doing it. Boom! Boom shakalaka. Came down on her like a ton of bricks. And you wonder where the anti-war movement went. It got consolidated into this, managed, funded, we need military-industrial New World Order controlled crap into where they start advocating for a phased withdrawal, a little bit of war. We're not going to abandon the whole bases, but we're going to stay on the bases. All this, empire crap trying to bleed off the anti-war group in support of them having an empire they're just not actively shooting at the moment. Well, then you got to count on the other side, the insurgents and the people there going, I don't like it none too much, you're here. In fact, that's what all this Al-Qaeda stuff is all screaming about, is we're over there. So I got to ask you straight up, man, justforeignpolicy.org advocates for what? Can we just freaking close all the bases, come home, and we're done? Or do you have a plan?
Well, I don't expect the U.S. military to leave Afghanistan tomorrow. That's not the way the world works.
Okay, a year from now, 2 years from now, when are they going to leave? Are they ever going to leave?
Oh, I think they will eventually leave, and that's
eventually what? What does that mean?
Well, that's what we're fighting about. The president, the baseline is that the president has announced this date of 2014, which is supposed to be,
supposed to be May 2010. That's what it's supposed to be.
No, we're talking about Afghanistan now. We're talking about the war in Afghanistan. President Obama has announced a date of transition of 2014 when Afghans are supposed to be in charge. What that deliberately leaves vague is when U.S. military forces are going to leave. And that's one of the things we're fighting about, is trying to make a real deadline after which U.S. troops will be gone and there will be no U.S. military bases in Afghanistan. That's something that's going to be determined by political struggle. Now,
well, can we political struggle with a date before the presidential election? I mean, can I get an amen on that one? Why are we waiting until after the election? You got a Republican.
We're not waiting till after the election. The strategy behind the McGovern-Jones bill is to try and organize people around the idea that there should be a real timetable. During the Iraq War, there were these different bills and fights about where Congress tried to say what the timetable was.
But it was always after the election. It's after the 08 election. It's after the 2010 election. It's going to be after the 2012 election. And here you are again, supposed to be representing the anti-war movement, not even demanding that, at least if we don't come out right freaking not later, that we can negotiate a timeline that will be, after the 2012 election cycle. What kind of anti-war movement is that?
Again, I haven't said anything about the 2012 election cycle. What we're campaigning for is that there should be a real timetable with an end date. I mean, the point is that if you can't get, let's say, 218 people in the House around the idea that there should be a timetable with an end date, then it's ridiculous to fight about, among 50 or 60 about exactly what the timetable with the end date should be. So by having the simpler demand, you focus on what the real issue is.
No, it's compromise.
Pentagon doesn't want any end date whatsoever.
No, you're already compromising. No, the fact that you even have an end date. This end date crap. People are dying not later. They're dying right now. And you got a Republican out there right now. Last week, a Republican on Fox television and another Republican, Gary Johnson was a governor, a sitting congressman saying, leave now. And I got the left out there going, we need to talk about a time scale.
I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to tell you something that you're going to have to deal with. If you look at the co-sponsors of the McGovern-Jones bill, the Democratic and Republican co-sponsors, they're on the Library of Congress website, Thomas. And you know who's the co-sponsor of that bill? Ron Paul. Ron Paul is the co-sponsor of that bill. That's how Congress works. That's how Washington works. That's how you try to move an agenda in Washington and organize a bunch of people around it.
How the heck has that been working?
Will you concede my point? The same guy. You just invoked against me. You said, you've got this story that I'm the sellout compromise guy because I'm pushing forward this bill of McGovern and Jones that would impose requirements that there be a timetable. And you're contrasting me to the libertarian candidates, the two, both of whom I've written about in support of. As you know, if you read my stuff, I wrote about Gary Johnson. I interviewed Gary Johnson. Been promoting his position against the war. Okay, so on the stage in the first GOP debate, Gary Johnson, Ron Paul came out very strong against the war in Afghanistan. You're invoking that, making a distinction between Ron Paul and me. I'm telling you that Ron Paul is an original co-sponsor of the same bill that you're slamming me for supporting. So your argument has just collapsed. Ron Paul is doing the same thing in terms of his congressional strategy than I am. So if you have a problem with my strategy, you have a problem with Ron Paul's strategy.
Ron Paul is standing up before a national audience in South Carolina Bible Belt, no less, on Fox television, say, end it now, running for president. And I'm going, how does that even
put me on that stage? I'll say end it now, too.
I want you to say end it now.
Sure, end it now. You raised the point of this piece that I wrote about the McGovern-Jones bill, which is the strategy that the peace groups in Washington are trying to organize members of Congress around to demand a real timetable of withdrawal. So far in all our efforts over the last several years, the high watermark for support of any initiative against the war among congressional Republicans is 9 votes. 9 congressional Republicans have done anything against the war. So that's what we need to deal with. We need to break those.
I understand. When we come back, we'll talk about, where the push is really going to come from. Are we going to be led by Congress, or are they going to follow our lead? And if they follow our lead, what are we leading them to? We'll talk about it when we come back in just a little bit.